Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. When I met Dan 8 years ago, I wasn't looking for love. I was 27, focused on my career, and content with where my life was heading. Then Dan walked into my office, a consultant hired to help restructure the company I worked for. He was smart, attentive, and had this quiet resilience about him that drew me in. At first, we were just colleagues, exchanging ideas over coffee and late-night emails. But the more I got to know him, the more I realized how deeply kind he was. One night, after months of working closely together, he opened up. He told me about his divorce, how he'd caught his ex-wife Lisa having an affair. They'd been married for nearly a decade, and he still couldn't get over what she did. What struck me most was how he handled it. He didn't go scorched earth, didn't tell the world what she'd done. Instead, he quietly filed for divorce and let everyone, his family, his friends, even his children, believe they had simply grown apart. I didn't want to ruin their image of her, he told me. She's their mom. They need to look up to her. I thought it was noble, even if it meant he bore the brunt of the divorce. His family rallied around Lisa, supporting her as she navigated life as a single mom, while Dan became the distant father who chose work over family. He never corrected the narrative. It took a year for Dan and me to transition from colleagues to partners. When we got married, I knew his kids would be part of the package. I tried my best to build a relationship with them, though it wasn't easy. Lisa was still deeply entrenched in their lives, and her influence over them and Dan's family was undeniable. At first, I didn't mind. I wasn't trying to replace her or win anyone over. I just wanted to carve out a peaceful life with Dan. His mother, my mother-in-law, seemed to like me well enough. She even praised my work ethic and business acumen, telling me she admired how I balanced my career and our growing family. When she asked me to join the family business, I hesitated. But then she said something that made me change my mind. This business is for family. One day, it'll be yours, Dan's, and your children's legacy. Those words gave me purpose. I wasn't just working for a paycheck. I was building something for my family's future. For 6 years, I poured everything I had into that business. I modernized operations, streamlined logistics, and negotiated deals that put us on the map. The business thrived under my leadership, and mother-in-law often said I was the daughter she never had. I believed her. Then, 6 months ago, mother-in-law was diagnosed with late-stage cancer. Dan and I were devastated. We stepped up, managed her care, taking her to appointments and ensuring she was comfortable. I thought we were solidifying the bond we'd built over the years. I was wrong. About a month before she passed, she called us into her hospital room. Her voice was weak but firm as she said, "I've decided to leave the company to Lisa and her kids." The words hit me like a physical blow. I couldn't even process what she was saying at first. "What?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked at me, her expression as cold as her tone. "Lisa told me everything. How you seduced Dan while they were still married, how you broke up their family, and how you expect me to reward you." I was shocked. I tried to speak to defend myself, but she cut me off. "You're a homewrecker, and I won't let this company fall into the hands of someone who built their life on lies and sin." Dan jumped to my defense, his voice shaking with anger. "That's not true, Mom. Lisa cheated on me. That's why we got divorced. I didn't even meet me until after it was over." But mother-in-law wasn't having it. "Don't lie to me, Dan," she said, her tone icy. "Mothers know their children, and I know when you're lying. Lisa wouldn't make this up. She's the victim here, left to raise her kids alone while you ran off with this woman." She went on to say that our children, our 6-year-old son and 3-year-old daughter, were born in sin and didn't deserve the family legacy. When mother-in-law passed away 2 weeks later, her will confirmed what she'd told us. The business went entirely to Lisa and Dan's 2 children from his first marriage. Dan and I were left with the house we lived in and nothing else. Lisa wasted no time taking over. On her first day as the new owner, she called a meeting and fired both me and Dan. Her reasoning? "I want to create a positive work environment, and that means getting rid of toxic people." I was crushed. Years of hard work, late nights, and sacrifices, all gone in an instant. After Lisa inherited the business and fired us, the tension between us and her continued to grow. She was thriving on the lies she had spun, living off the fruits of our labor while painting herself as the victim. But what hurt most was how her manipulation had extended to Dan's kids, turning them against us. They had believed their mother's narrative that I was the evil stepmother who ruined their family. At that point, I decided I couldn't stay silent anymore. For years, I'd respected Dan's decision to shield Lisa from scrutiny, but her lies had cost us everything. Dan and I debated for weeks about whether to tell the kids the truth. He had always prioritized protecting their image of Lisa, but after everything she had done, her lies, her cruelty, and now her weaponizing of the children, it became clear that shielding her wasn't helping anyone. It was just damaging us. The kids deserved to know. One evening, Dan sat them down at our kitchen table. They were skeptical at first, their arms crossed and expressions guarded. But he began gently. He told them about how their mother had been unfaithful, how he had caught her having an affair with the man she's now living with. He explained that he hadn't shared this earlier because he wanted to protect them from the ugliness of it all, but that it was time for the truth to come out. At first, they were silent, their faces a mixture of shock and confusion. Then the questions started. "Are you saying Mom lied to us? You mean she was with him while you were still married? She told us you left her for another woman." Dan answered every question as honestly as he could. He even showed them some old messages he had kept as proof, which he had never planned to use, but felt were necessary to clarify the truth. The hardest part was watching their disbelief turn into anger and hurt. Not at Dan or me, but at their mother. They realized that the man Lisa was now living with wasn't just some new partner, but the very person who had helped break up their family. "I can't believe she did this," Dan's daughter, 16 female, said, tears streaming down her face. "She lied to us this whole time." Dan's son, 14 male, was more vocal. "I don't want to live with him anymore. How could she expect us to stay under the same roof as the guy who ruined everything?" True to their word, the kids refused to stay with Lisa any longer. They packed their things and moved in with us that same week. Lisa was furious when she found out. She accused us of poisoning the kids against her, calling Dan a bitter ex and me a vindictive homewrecker. But the kids stood their ground. "You lied to us, Mom," Dan's daughter told her during a tense phone call. "You made us believe Dad was the bad guy, but it was you. How could you expect us to trust you after that?" Lisa tried everything to guilt them into coming back, from tearful apologies to outright bribes, but nothing worked. They didn't want to live with her or the man they now saw as the reason their family had fallen apart. Having the kids with us has been both challenging and healing. They're still processing everything, but they've been open about their feelings, and we're doing our best to support them. It's not easy to rebuild trust after years of being fed lies, but every day feels like a step in the right direction. As for Lisa, she's still running the family business and playing the victim to anyone who will listen. But now that the kids know the truth, her hold over them has been broken. I won't pretend everything is perfect. Dan is still mourning the loss of his relationship with his mother, and I'm still grappling with the betrayal of having my hard work stolen from me. But having the kids with us, seeing them finally understand the truth, has been a small light in the darkness. So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for finally telling the kids the truth about their mother's affair? Should we have continued to shield her to protect their feelings? Or did they deserve to know the reality of what happened? Kids deserve the truth, especially when they've been fed lies for so long. I'm honestly amazed OP and her husband kept quiet for as long as they did. That takes an incredible amount of restraint, and I don't blame OP and her husband for finally reaching their breaking point. Lisa had the audacity to manipulate everyone, her kids, OP's mother-in-law, even the family business. She clearly didn't expect her lies to unravel, and now that they have, she's furious because she's losing control. Good for OP and Dan for standing their ground and putting the kids' well-being first. They may have been hurt by the truth, but at least they're no longer living in a fantasy that protects someone who didn't deserve it. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Let's be clear. Your husband's ex-wife created this entire mess with her lies. She built her narrative on deceit, manipulated her children, and even turned your mother-in-law against you. You were more than patient and respectful, but Lisa pushed too far. The kids deserve to know the truth. They're old enough to handle it, and they clearly see her actions for what they are now. Honestly, your husband sounds like an incredibly kind man, But maybe shielding the truth for so long wasn't the best choice. Still, it's admirable that he wanted to protect his kids. The fact that they moved in with you speaks volumes about where their trust now lies. Keep being the supportive, honest stepmom they need right now. Lisa can scream and cry all she wants, but this is the bed she made. Not the a-hole. And honestly, Lisa has no one to blame but herself. She lied to her kids, manipulated her ex-mother-in-law, and profited from her deceit by stealing the business from under you and your husband. What kind of person expects her children to live with the man who helped destroy their family and then acts shocked when they refuse? You did the right thing by telling the kids the truth. They were living in a world of lies, and now they have clarity. It's heartbreaking that your mother-in-law believed Lisa's lies, but at least her influence is no longer dictating your life. Keep focusing on rebuilding with your husband and stepkids. They clearly see you as a safe haven now. Info. How are the kids adjusting now that they know the truth? It sounds like this was a lot for them to process, especially if they've been fed a false narrative for years. I'm glad they moved in with you and Dan. It shows they trust you both, but I imagine it's a tough time for them emotionally. Also, not the a-hole. Lisa created this situation by lying and manipulating everyone around her. It's sad that your mother-in-law believed her, but at least the kids are now seeing her true colors. It sounds like you're handling this as gracefully as possible given the circumstances. Just keep being there for the kids. They're going to need your support more than ever. My eldest son is 37 and married to my daughter-in-law who is also 37. 3 months ago they came over and told my wife and I that they had done 2 rounds of IVF, but unfortunately neither were successful, and they needed some money so they could secure another round of IVF with an egg donor this time. Obviously my wife and I were glad to offer to help, and fortunately had some money we could give. However, given the short notice, the total was still short, which brought me to the decision to sell my old Boxster, since I didn't use it anymore, and have another car. Managed to sell it to an old friend, and had more than enough for my daughter-in-law's fertility treatment. For those interested, it was thankfully a success. They're both excited and the pregnancy is going well. The problem is that my youngest daughter, who is 19, found out that I sold the Porsche in order to help and was extremely upset with me. Didn't understand why until she told me that I'd apparently promised her when she was 14 that the Porsche would be hers after she got her degree. She's never mentioned this before, and I don't recall it happening, but I probably did, so I apologized and promised to buy her another car then, or even another Boxster. However, she's still not happy with me and told me to just forget it. Even if I remembered, the time sensitivity of my son and daughter-in-law's situation would have taken preference, because my daughter still has a few years until then, and I'd be able to buy another car for her. Am I the a-hole? You're the a-hole. It seems that your younger daughter had an attachment to both the promise you made to her and the vehicle itself. To find out that the promise you made to her wasn't even worth you remembering must have been an emotional blow on top of losing a car that had some sort of inherent value to her. I also find it worrisome that you'd say, "She's never mentioned this before, and I don't recall it happening," but I probably did. This indicates to me that you have a pattern of doing this. You have a pattern of promising things to her, whether they are physical items or physical presents, and then forget to follow through on things often enough that you yourself say that you probably, in fact, did it this time too. Your younger daughter is not somehow less than your older son and daughter-in-law, which is what your actions are telling her right now, and which is what you are literally saying when you say that your daughter-in-law's situation takes preference. I get the feeling that because of the age difference between yourself, your kids, and your kids with one another, there have been some historic imbalances like this which have led to your daughter feeling written off, hence her telling you to forget it. She's close to giving up on you, I think. Is that something you're really willing to risk? If I were you, I'd buy back the car and give it to her before you lose her forever due to your blatant disregard and disproportionate favoritism. You're the a-hole. It's very commendable that you helped your son and daughter-in-law, but you've completely dismissed your daughter's feelings. You made a promise and forgot about it, while she got sentimentally attached to the idea. You broke your promise, and you can't fix it by just getting another one. A different Porsche would not be the same one as her dad had as she was growing up. It's not just a car to her. It's a piece of you that you promised her that she can now never have. You should have at least sat down and talked to her about it before selling it. I'm going to go against the grain here and say not the a-hole. If everything in your post is true, then I don't understand how you're the a-hole. If you forgot that you promised the car to her, then that's an honest mistake, which you apologized for, and you've even offered to buy her one of her own. Like, what else can you do? If you remembered that you had promised the car to her but didn't have the conversation with her first to let her know that you were selling the car, then you'd definitely be the a-hole. But it doesn't look like you did recall. I get it's upsetting for her, but you forgot, apologized, and you're offering to replace what you sold. I, male 20, was born to a single mom. Both my biological parents aged out in foster care and had a lot of issues growing up. My mom was 17 when she had me, and she saw this as an opportunity to get her life in order. Meanwhile, my dad left while she was still pregnant. My mom got married to my stepdad when I was 4, and he adopted me right around that time, and has been the best dad I could have ever asked for. Luckily, he comes from a huge family, so along with a dad, I also got grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins, and was given an awesome childhood. Growing up, my bio dad was never really mentioned. My mom never said anything about him other than he wasn't ready to be a parent, which I was totally okay with. 2 months ago, he contacted me through social media. He did the whole, "Hey, I'm your dad" message, and asked if we could talk. At first, I didn't mind. I gave him my number and we chatted a bit. He seemed to be doing okay and was overall a pleasant person, until I mentioned my relationship with my stepdad. For some reason, he got really upset that I call him dad and are very close. He even got upset that I speak Korean. My stepdad is Korean and we lived in South Korea for 7 years, and basically called me a traitor for accepting another man as my dad. I was quite speechless and told him that since he was the one to walk out on me, he has no right to judge me or my dad, and said that if he feels this way, we should probably go back to being strangers. Again, he called me a traitor and began sending countless messages to my mom about how she turned me against him, which is simply not true. I ended up blocking him, and I thought I was in the right about it. But my friends keep saying that it's natural he feels threatened and jealous, and I overreacted and should give him another chance to get to know him. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. He's not your dad. He's simply the person who got your mom pregnant. Genetic links don't create relationships. So glad you got a great dad to actually raise you. Not the a-hole. It's not natural that a man who abandoned his child should be threatened that he is replaced by another man. With that line of reasoning, your bio dad is saying he would have preferred you had no father figure and been alone. The fact that he is putting his own shame and delayed need to have a son above your needs as the child, and attacking you, shows that you're way better off returning to strangers. Just because you share DNA does not mean that gives him the right to treat you poorly. While it may be natural to feel jealous, most adults have a level of emotional maturity that keeps those feelings in check. Considering he was the one that signed over parental rights, it should not be a big surprise you call the man that adopted you dad. Sorry your bio dad is so immature. For your friends to say that you should give him another chance to get to know him, tell them you know enough. Not the a-hole. Stepsister, 18 female, and I, 18 female, are both college students. I went to community college in my hometown so I could be near my paternal side of the family and old friends. Currently, I live with my 3 best friends from childhood. My sister was meant to be in a university, but after a month decided it was not for her and decided she wanted to try for late admission to the community college I attend, allegedly. When this happened, I got a call from my mom saying she wanted to live with us and how she and her husband would pay her rent. I told my mom that would not be happening and I wouldn't be considering it. Background: my stepsister and I met when we were 9. My mom had an affair with her dad. My dad died before the divorce could be finalized, and my mom was pretty much shunned by people who knew what she had done, so they decided to move us all to where we live now. I was heartbroken to leave everyone I loved behind after losing my dad. She was super excited and way too clingy. She wanted a sister, best friend, someone to be with 24/7. It was aggravating because she would jump to telling my mom when I would tell her to leave me alone, or if I was planning something without her, or if I didn't want to go do something she wanted to do. Pretty much every time I said no, she would run to make it happen. She'd tell me I had to spend time with her because that's what family does. She never cared if I wanted to do anything. When we were 16, she had me grounded for 2 months because I told my history teacher that I was an only child and that my dad was dead. She heard about that and then told them, saying she and her dad were my sister and dad and how it was awful to say he was dead when he wasn't. My mom was furious at me for bringing up the past. I never told them my college plans so I could get away from all of them. I've always suspected she might have known or applied everywhere and made her choice based on where I was. Regardless, I was done when I moved out in June. I've went no contact with my mom and her husband and stepsister. I had dodged calls for months, But then my mom got smart and called me somewhere else. My mom was furious that I said no. Then my stepsister shows up at my grandparents' house, who are nothing to her, wanting to know where I lived. They called me after sending her away. She showed up at my school and proceeded to tell me she was needing somewhere to live, and she was in a shelter. I told her it wasn't my problem and she was not going to live with me. After that, I got a string of messages from different numbers my mom and her husband got their hands on. Then my maternal grandmother called and told me I should have let her stay. She said I should consider her an ally and not blame her for the past, etc. She told me I was behaving unfairly. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Tell your roommates what is going on so they know not to let her or your mother in the apartment. Tell the community college what is going on so that if anyone asks about your class schedule or place of residence, they know not to give it out. Then sit down with your grandmother and explain that you aren't taking anything out on your stepsister, that you are simply choosing not to be manipulated by her or your mother any longer, that your entire life after your dad died, everything in your life, was dictated by what your mom or your stepsister wanted. They never asked. They told you what was going to happen. That is why you moved away and went to a small community college, so you could live your life on your own terms without any pressure from anyone else. And that is why you are drawing a hard boundary with your stepsister. You would love it if the two of you were close as actual sisters, but she is not mature enough for that. She only cares about herself, and you had to make the hard decision to remove her from your life for your own sanity. Not the a-hole. Sounds like your mom is a selfish narcissist. She broke her marriage and then unpinned your life to suit her selfish choice. It doesn't sound like you were ever a priority, and there is no reason for you to suffer for them any longer. Not the a-hole. Just because your mom married her affair partner, that doesn't make what she did to your dad all right, and it doesn't make him your dad or his daughter your sister. You owe your stepsister nothing. That being said, it doesn't seem to be based solely on that incident. You've put up with 9 years of being forced into this relationship with your stepsister, and it sounds like your feelings were never taken into consideration. Only hers. Her forcing the issue at every turn was not being an ally. You're an adult now, and you get to choose who is in your life and who you call family. End of story. Edited to add, if your mom was willing to pay her rent for her to live with you, there's no way she's at a homeless shelter now. I, 24 male, have twins, 8 male and female, who I obviously had very young. Their mom was my first girlfriend and got pregnant with them when we were freshmen in high school, 14 or 15. She came from a very well-off family whose public appearance meant everything to them. She was on board with keeping them, but a few months after giving birth, she and her parents told me that they wanted to give them up for adoption because they didn't want the babies to mess up her future. I wouldn't agree to it, and that resulted in her signing away her parental rights, moving away, and blocking me on everything. I tried to reach out to her and her family multiple times over the years, up until the twins were 3. I continued to be the best dad I could be without her, even though it was extremely hard, and even made it through college with them. My sophomore year of college, I met a girl who's now my wife and has taken on the mother role for my kids. They love her. I love her. It's great. She legally adopted them after we got married, and everything has been going so good. About 3 months ago, I received a call from a number that seemed familiar, but I couldn't remember who it could be. When I answered, it was my kid's bio mom asking about them. I immediately told her that it wasn't her place to ask about them, and they have a mom, and to lose my number. Since that day, I've gotten calls, texts, and voicemails from random numbers, and they're all from her. I never answer or respond to them. A little over a week ago, I was out with my wife and kids when their bio mom approached me. When I realized that it was her, I pulled her away from them and told her she needs to leave me and my family alone. She immediately started sobbing and telling me how sorry she was and how all she craves is motherhood, and that she was young and dumb and just wants her babies back. I told her that I didn't care, and she made her bed. Now she needs to lay in it, and that if she contacted me again, I would be filing a restraining order against her. We parted ways and I took my family home. My wife didn't ask questions until the kids were asleep, and that's when I told her about the calls and texts. We talked about everything, and my wife told me that I was being unfair to her for punishing her for a choice that she made and probably didn't have a say in at 15. She wants me to give her a chance to at least explain everything, but I don't feel like I want to do that. Raising 2 kids as a kid myself was hard, and I did it with very little help. I don't feel that I should give her a chance to explain her decisions, but my wife says it's unfair not to allow an explanation. Am I the a-hole? I would like to add that my kids are fully aware that my wife isn't their biological mother. She's been in their lives since they were 4. Also, since they've understood the concept of a mother, around 3-ish, they were a bit curious as to who their biological mother is, and I've never hid it from them. I did my best to explain that situation to them in a way that they would understand. I would always show them pictures, and stopped shortly after I met my wife. I've talked to my personal therapist, as this situation has been extremely stressful for me to handle, because it's felt like years of suppressed emotions are resurfacing. With the advice of my therapist, my wife and I will be meeting with their mother to at least hear her out. Not the a-hole at all, and I would not entertain letting her have any contact. The situation would be different if she had contacted you periodically over the years, or at least when she turned 18, 21, to express regret or ask how they were doing. But she said nothing for 8 years, even when OP tried to contact her. If her family was able to control her until she was 24, you don't want someone like that in you or your kids' lives. Not the a-hole. You don't owe that woman a thing. She and her family made a decision years ago, and it was not to be a part of the children's lives. She now regrets it and wants to be their mom. No. They have a mother who has been there day in and day out and is legally their mother. What happens when they meet this woman and next week, month, year, she decides that being mom isn't for her and vanishes? Kids need stability and predictability. Document everything and file a restraining order if necessary. Explain to your kids when they are old enough to understand and make a choice of their own. If you let this woman in now, there's no telling what she will want next. It could be a slippery slope. Not the a-hole. She willingly signed her rights away and blocked you for 3 years. Her expectations are really weird. She can't get her babies back just because she craves motherhood. That's not how that works. If she craves motherhood so badly, she can find a man who will father her children. Her stalkery behavior is creepy and wants to be a mother for the wrong reasons. Raising a child is a lifelong commitment, not something you do on a whim to satisfy cravings.